Why is it that Shedeur Sanders throws for over 4,000 yards and breaks 100-plus school records? Yet the NFL media covers one shaky preseason game like it's a career obituary. Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel plays with third stringers, throws for less, and somehow gets excuses, praise, and protection. What are we doing here? Look, call it what you want. Bias, brand control, favored narratives. But the difference in how these two quarterbacks are being treated is no longer subtle. It's obvious, deliberate, and louder than anything ESPN is willing to say on air. You see, Shedeur Sanders isn't just playing football. He's changing football culture. He's breaking the mold of what a quarterback is supposed to look like, act like, and build around. And that's a problem, but not for fans like us. It's a problem for the NFL brand machine that doesn't know what to do when a player refuses to stay in their fifth-rounder lane. This video isn't a rant about stats or pre-draft rankings. This is about jargon versus judgment, narrative versus numbers, perception versus performance. Because the way Shedeur's being covered, or more importantly, torn down, isn't just unfair. It's a glimpse into how quickly the NFL props up one player while quietly trying to erase another. So what's really going on behind the scenes? Why are anonymous sources suddenly discrediting a player the media was hyping just months ago? And what does Dillon Gabriel's treatment have to do with keeping Shedeur out of the spotlight? Let's break it down. Because when you follow the media patterns long enough, you start to see the machine for what it is. And trust me, they don't want you seeing this clearly. Dillon Gabriel throws 5 shaky series with the third-string offense in a preseason game. And somehow, the headlines are about his upside. Shedeur Sanders plays with the same kind of service squad talent, puts up cleaner numbers, 0 interceptions or fumbles. And the conversation immediately turns to his attitude, his decision-making, or that tired label, fifth-rounder. The difference in how these two quarterbacks are talked about isn't just bizarre, it's intentional. Gabriel is getting what NFL insiders quietly call narrative protection. He's being framed as a developmental gem, a guy who fits the system and just needs time. They tell us he's raw but moldable. Meanwhile, Shedeur, who was mocked as a first-round talent just months ago, is being treated like a media problem, not a football player. No grace period, no potential talk, just cold takes and cherry-picked outrage. Why? Because Gabriel fits the traditional NFL media prototype: quiet, coachable, low maintenance. In other words, he checks the boxes that keep sponsors, coaches, and old-school analysts comfortable. Shedeur, he dares to be popular, dares to speak up, dares to bring a fan base, camera crews, and worse, a legacy with power attached to his name. That's a threat to the system, especially when that player isn't drafted in round 1, because that's when the gatekeepers lose control of the narrative. Instead of reporting the reality, the NFL media spins it. Gabriel equals system fit. Shedeur equals drama. But here's what makes it ridiculous. Shedeur outperformed Gabriel in every major metric last season. So if it were really about the tape, this wouldn't even be a debate. Let's call it what it is. This isn't just quarterback evaluation, it's image control. Let's just be real for a second. The numbers aren't close. Last season, Shedeur Sanders threw for over 4,000 yards, completed nearly 70% of his passes, and set multiple school and NCAA records. We're talking 100-plus records shattered across his college career. He wasn't just good, he was historic. He did it with a below-average offensive line, a program in transition, and non-stop pressure from both media and defenses. Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel, solid numbers, sure, but he had a stronger O-line, a wide receiver room loaded with talent, and started the majority of his games with top-tier reps and coaching continuity. Still, Shedeur had more yards, more touchdowns, a higher completion percentage, and significantly fewer mistakes under pressure. And yet, it's Gabriel being listed as the more NFL-ready option? Make it make sense. What's even more wild, Shedeur has 0 documented turnovers this preseason. No picks, no fumbles, no fatal mistakes. But all it took was 1 game with limited reps and third stringers. And suddenly, the media question is whether he's built for the league? Come on. If Gabriel had performed at Shedeur's level in college, he'd have been media-crowned the next Breeze. But Shedeur does it? The praise comes with qualifiers like, but can he handle a pro scheme? Or, he needs to be humbled. What are we actually judging here? Performance or perception? Because if we're watching the same film, the answer is clear. Shedeur Sanders has done more with less, under more scrutiny, and with higher consistency. But the media doesn't want to talk about that. No, they'd rather talk about narrative. Up next, we're diving into how the media protects one QB while tearing the other one down at every turn. When Dillon Gabriel struggles, the media has a script ready. It's just preseason. He didn't have the starters. He's learning a new system. He just needs more time. But when Shedeur Sanders plays with the same backup squads and puts up a clean sheet, suddenly it's, well, he's playing too cautious. He's not taking enough risks. He doesn't look comfortable. He's just a 5th rounder. Knows the theme? With Gabriel, every mistake gets covered by excuses. With Shedeur, every performance gets reframed as a problem. Even when Shedeur does nothing wrong, no interceptions, no fumbles, no boneheaded decisions, they find a way to criticize his demeanor, his media presence, or worse, his background. You'll hear terms like, he needs to mature. He's too confident. He carries himself like a starter. Excuse me, isn't that what you want in a quarterback? Or are we only okay with confidence when it comes in the right package? The truth is, sports media hates what it can't control. And Shedeur doesn't play the game on their terms. He's not running to press conferences with scripted humility. He's not making it easy for people who want to reduce him to a draft position. And because of that, the coverage is different. The system has always had room for guys like Gabriel, quiet, traditional, system-friendly. But Shedeur, he talks like a franchise QB, walks like one, already has a fan base bigger than half the league's rookies combined. So they can't ignore him, but they sure try to discredit him. And that's not even the worst part. Because when Shedeur walked into the league with 5th round next to his name, everything changed, including how the league decided to frame his potential. Up next, let's talk about how the NFL uses draft position to control the narrative and the player. In the NFL, your draft position isn't just a number, it becomes a label. And in Shedeur Sanders' case, 5th rounder is being weaponized. It's not just how he's ranked, it's how he's talked about. The moment you're drafted outside the top 3 rounds, the league decides you're supposed to be quiet, grateful, unassuming, and most importantly, easy to ma. But Shedeur, he didn't get the memo. He walked in like he belonged, carried himself like a 1st rounder, spoke like someone who wasn't just lucky to be here, but already building his legacy. And for that, he's being punished, not professionally, but narratively. Every flaw gets magnified under the prove yourself lens. Every strength gets categorized as potential, not proof. Meanwhile, others drafted just a few slots higher are getting treated like future stars, even with less production, fewer accolades, and 0 charisma. Funny how fast the league decides who gets to be a project and who's simply not ready. Let's not ignore this double standard. If Shedeur had gone in the 2nd round, would we still be hearing this noise? Or would they already be calling him the future of the franchise? The NFL didn't like that Shedeur already had power walking in the door. He had fans, influence, money, brand awareness before they drafted him. And because of that, his draft spot wasn't about talent. It was about putting him in his place. That's why 5th round sticks to him like glue. Even though most 5th rounders don't move merch, draw millions of views, or inspire this much media obsession. This isn't about football. It's about who the system gets to control and who pushes back. Next up, let's talk about how talent without the system's support becomes a setup, and how Shedeur may be fighting through that setup right now. Here's a harsh truth about quarterback development that most fans ignore. It's not just about talent, it's about the system you're thrown into. And when it comes to Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel, the systems are night and day. Dillon Gabriel is in a clean, quarterback-safe environment. He's got structure, protection, and most importantly, belief from the coaching staff. No one's asking him to prove his worth every snap. No one's digging through his body language looking for red flags. He's allowed to grow. Meanwhile, Shedeur, he's in a system that doesn't feel like it's built around anyone. Thrown into games with third stringers, operating behind shaky protection, no rhythm, no identity, just vibes and stacked pressure. Yet somehow, the expectations for him are higher. He makes one conservative read, he's called hesitant. He avoids forcing deep balls, suddenly he's not NFL aggressive. But if he chucked 3 picks instead, they'd label him unready. The sad reality is this: some QBs are handed space to develop. Others are handed a spotlight and expected to survive it. When Lamar Jackson came in after Joe Flacco, Baltimore rebuilt their entire offense around his style. When Richardson came into Indy, they committed, even with less experience. But Shedeur, he's being evaluated like a finished product in an experimental setup, with no guarantees and no consistency. So maybe the issue isn't Shedeur underperforming. Maybe it's the NFL setting him up to stall, then pointing fingers when he makes one wrong move. Because for guys like him, the margin for error isn't just small, it's non-existent. Here's what nobody wants to talk about. NFL analysts and former pros were hyping up Shedeur Sanders long before anyone mentioned Dillon Gabriel. Dan Orlovsky had him mocked in the first round. Darius Butler, an actual former NFL defensive back, talked about Shedeur like he was a future starter. Scouts and insiders were calling him one of the most accurate short to intermediate passers in college football. But suddenly, after one preseason game with third-string linemen and zero support, media narratives flipped nearly overnight. Now he's overrated. Now he needs to be humbled. Now he's not ready. Wait, what changed? Did Shedeur stop being productive? Did he suddenly forget everything that had draft experts buzzing just a few months ago? Nope. The only thing that changed was the media's comfort level. See, it's easy to support Shedeur when he's still earning praise. It's harder when he starts controlling his own narrative, building a brand, and walking into the league with power most rookies don't have. When you can't tell the story for him, you try to discredit the story he's telling himself. That's why the media will quote anonymous scouts before quoting people who actually played the game. That's why praise from former players, people who recognize real talent, is brushed aside in favor of vague, fear-driven critique. This isn't even about Shedeur anymore. It's about what he represents for every player who refuses to play small just because the league put them in a small box. Shedeur Sanders is one of the most watched, talked about, and followed rookies in the NFL, and that's exactly why people want to tear him down. It's a pattern we've seen before. The moment an athlete builds too much hype, the media shifts its tone. Because in today's sports world, being confident, marketable, and successful isn't enough. You also have to be quiet about it. And Shedeur isn't. He knows his worth. He carries himself like a franchise QB. He doesn't apologize for the cameras, the swagger, or the fan base that comes with him. And that makes people uncomfortable, especially when the player they've chosen to invest in, like Dillon Gabriel, doesn't generate the same buzz. Let's be honest, the hate towards Shedeur didn't start when he threw a pass. It started when he refused to shrink, even after falling to the 5th round. That's when fans said he was cocky. That's when analysts called him polarizing. That's when the media stopped celebrating him and started nitpicking every move. Why? Because it's much easier to love a quiet superstar than a loud, unapologetic one, especially if that player didn't come from the approved pipeline. What they don't realize is this: Shedeur's popularity isn't manufactured. It's not PR. It's earned over years, through pressure, through expectations, through results. And if a player like that still isn't allowed to be confident, ask yourself, who really gets to be celebrated? And who gets told to sit down, stay in their place, and wait their turn? Next up, we pull back even further to show how this isn't just about two players. It's bigger than Shedeur. If you think this is just about Shedeur Sanders versus Dillon Gabriel, you're missing the bigger picture. Because this exact playbook has been run for years. One player fits the mold. He's quiet, safe, and doesn't make the brand nervous. The other? He's dynamic, confident, and refuses to be boxed in. Guess which one the media leans into? It's not a Shedeur problem. It's a system problem. The NFL and sports media in general have a long history of controlling the narrative around quarterbacks, especially those who don't come from the traditional QB factory. And when a guy like Shedeur breaks through that gate, the response isn't celebration, it's control. The same people who hyped up Arch Manning with 0 college tape were silent when he underperformed. But Shedeur? He wins at an HBCU, breaks records, competes at Colorado, and is still called overhyped? Make that make sense. This is about race, branding, and who gets to be the face of a franchise. It's about who's seen as marketable without needing to tone down, versus who's told to wait, evolve, or humble themselves before being seen as worthy. And as NIL deals, social media power, and celebrity influence shape the next generation of athletes, more and more are realizing they don't need the media to build value. They bring their own spotlight. That's what really scares the people running the old system. Because when players stop needing gatekeepers, they become impossible to control. And Shedeur Sanders is proving in real time that the gate is wide open. At the end of the day, Shedeur Sanders is doing exactly what people say they want from their athletes. He's performing, he's leading, he's staying out of trouble, staying focused, and doing it all with confidence. And yet, the criticism keeps coming. Why? Because Shedeur refuses to play small. He's not crawling his way up the system hoping for permission to speak. He walked into the league with a fan base, a platform, and a sense of purpose. And that intimidates people who still believe athletes should be grateful just to be here. Dillon Gabriel isn't the villain here. He's playing his game. But the system around him, the way the media coddles one while constantly questioning the other, that's the real issue. Shedeur is being punished for something unspoken, for not letting others control his story. He's more accurate, more visible, more proven under pressure, yet somehow less embraced by the establishment. That's not football analysis. That's narrative protection. And the bigger truth? The league knows what he's worth. It's not just the arm, it's the influence. And when that kind of power comes from someone they didn't approve of, they'll do whatever they can to keep it in check. But here's the good news. No matter how hard they push, the culture isn't leaning away from players like Shedeur. It's being led by them. And the sooner the NFL, the media, and those threatened by change accept that, the sooner they'll stop fighting the spotlight and finally listen to the player standing under it.